Let's take that phrase we heard earlier. A computer program is a list of instructions, and add that we write using a programming language the computer understands. Right now, this is a useful way to think about everything. Your sentence is not entirely true. I will explain what I mean by that in about 4 minutes. But if we want to get started writing this list of instructions to the computer, there are many different programming languages we could use.
C, C++, C Sharp, Objective-C, Java, JavaScript, Ruby,
Python, Swift, Ruby, Go, Perl, Ada, COBOL, Fortran.
And we'll talk about why there are so many. But I say again, we're not going to focus on any one of these languages. We're going to see a lot of them. So I'll show you some older languages like C from 1972, some new ones like Swift, released in 2014, some languages that are really popular right now, like Ruby and Python, and some other languages that were once popular but aren't any longer, like Algol. And you'll notice a few things. Some programming languages seem to be all uppercase, others all lowercase. Some use a lot of symbols, curly braces, and semicolons everywhere. Others don't. But you don't have to worry about memorizing any of those details. Right now, that's not necessary, that's not important, because we're using these not to find out what's true about one specific language. We want to know what's true about all of this. And the first truth: to begin writing a computer program, writing instructions in any of these programming languages is simpler than many people realize. We don't need to first go and download and install a whole bunch of special new applications onto our computer before we begin, because when we write these instructions, we use plain text to do it. And that means you could use the simplest, most basic text editor provided on your computer, like Notepad on a Windows PC or TextEdit on a Mac. Programmers don't need a word processor like Word or Pages because we don't want any formatting here. Nothing is in bold or italics. Programming language doesn't care about that. And it doesn't care what font or font size you use. It just wants plain text. Now, regardless of programming language, there is another term you'll use for programming language instructions written in plain text. We just call this source code. And when a programmer tells you they spent all day coding or all day writing code, they mean writing source code. Now, sidebar, you might wonder, if this is called source code, is there any other kind of code? Well, yes, there is. We'll get to that shortly. End sidebar. Let me be clear about something. I said you don't need any special software to write this source code, and that's true, but you often want one. There are applications you can install on your computer that will make your life easier. Most programmers don't just use Notepad or TextEdit. We have specialized editors designed for programmers that add things like color coding and can help correct simple mistakes in programming, the same way that a word processor can help with spelling and capitalization. Now, there are many of these editors available, different ones for different languages and different operating systems. We'll dive deeper into this, but later on in the course. A quick sidebar. I said the font doesn't matter when writing source code, but you might be wondering that whenever you've seen programming on TV or in the movies, it always has the same kind of look to it, often something like this. You don't see source code written in a font like Times New Roman or Comic Sans. But if it doesn't matter what font we use, why does it usually look like this? Well, partially it's history. Early programming environments included simple, dumb terminals that were black screens with green text. That's all they could do. And even though modern operating systems can provide more visually stimulating content, a lot of programmers are very comfortable with a very simple and straightforward layout. Partly it's a little cinematic. Most programmers don't code with just a green font on a black background. They use editors with color coding. Some like a dark background, some like a light background. But one thing is true. Even though we could use any font we want because the language doesn't care, the convention is that when writing source code, we use a monospaced font where each letter uses the same width, as opposed to a proportional font where a letter like I or L takes up less space than a letter like M. The reason is that in a monospace font, it's easy to tell when words and sentences across different lines are the same length. But is that important, you think? Well, yes, it is. You see, when we write code, we care about exact indentation and how our lines line up with each other as we're looking at them. And it's not just for aesthetics. It makes the structure of our code more apparent. It lets us read source code and easily tell which parts of the program belong together. That's why code looks like code.